Hello Year 7, it's Miss Redmond here for your fifth and final summary PowerPoint for the cells topic, and this one is called What are Unicellular Organisms? If you haven't got one already, please go and get a pen and a piece of paper so that you can make notes and do the little tasks as we go through. Right, at the bottom of this slide you can see the learning journey for this lesson. Please feel free to write down those points, and you've also got a DNA on here, which is this a plant or an animal cell, and why? So write down your ideas please, because the next slide is going to show you the answer. It's neither. This is a unicellular organism called Euglena, and we'll talk about it in a bit more detail in this presentation. Okay, so multicellular versus unicellular. So what does multi mean? For example, multicolored. Write down your ideas and then I'll tell you the answer. So multi means many. Next little question. What does cellular mean? Write down your ideas and then I'll give you the answer. Cellular means something that's made out of cells. And what does organism means? There's a bit of revision from the first summary PowerPoint for this topic. Write down your ideas. An organism is a living thing. So what is a multicellular organism? See if you can put together those three ideas and write down what a multicellular organism is. It's a living thing made out of many cells. So plants and animals are multicellular organisms. Human beings are multicellular organisms. The lotus flower from the first PowerPoint is a multicellular organism. Everything we've talked about so far is a multicellular organism, but they're also unicellular organisms. And what do you think one of those might be? Write down your ideas. So a unicellular organism is a living thing made up of only one cell, and there's lots and lots of examples of these. There's way more unicellular organisms, in fact, than there are multicellular organisms, but they're all very, very small. So unless you've seen them down a microscope, you won't ever have seen one. Here are some links to YouTube videos about unicellular organisms. I recommend you pause the video now and then go and check those out, because it'll give you more of an idea of what we're talking about. So you've got Euglena, amoeba, paramecium, and general unicellular organisms. Here are some drawings of unicellular organisms. You will sometimes see them referred to as protozoa. The ones we're going to talk about today are amoeba, Euglena, and I think we're going to mention paramecium as well. In the homework, I think it mentions this unicellular organism, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. Okay, so here's a paramecium. So the paramecium, because it's a unicellular organism, it's only made up of one single cell. It can't form tissues and organs, which we'll talk about more in the body systems topic. So it has to have subcellular structures or organelles to do all of its functions. So here you've got an oral groove, whereas an animal would have a mouth. And here you've got food vacuoles, whereas an animal would have a digestive system. And over here you've got a contractile vacuole that is used to get rid of waste. So animals have loads of different ways of getting rid of waste. So humans urinate, we breathe out, exhale, and we defecate, which is making poo, expelling poo. And paramecium, instead of doing all of those things, just have these contractile vacuoles which push waste out. and you've also got around the outside these things which are called cilia. Cilia are like tiny little hairs, and they move backwards and forwards, and they allow this cell to move. So if you've had a look on the YouTube video about paramecium, you can see them swimming around using their cilia, and some of our cells actually have cilia. For example, the cells which line your breathing tubes, we'll talk about them more in the body systems topic again, have little cilia to flick any particles of dust and bacteria back up out of your breathing tubes. And here is a paramecium as seen down a light microscope. All right, the next cell that we're going to talk about is an amoeba. And this amoeba is currently eating this thing which is called a desmid. So it's going to surround its prey, because it is a predator, the amoeba, and eventually it's going to engulf this tiny creature. So it's going to absorb this creature into its body, and it's going to digest it in there. So here's a labeled diagram. So again, you can see the food being engulfed by the pseudopods. Now the pseudopods are these little things almost like feet, and what the amoeba does is it changes its body shape to extend these little feet-like structures, and then it'll grab onto some food and engulf it, or it'll grab onto something else and it'll pull the rest of its body behind it, and that's how it moves. So again, if you've watched one of the videos, you can see an amoeba doing that. Here you've got a food vacuole, again for digesting food, and here you've got a contractile vacuole which excretes water and waste. That word excretes means to get rid of. The amoeba has a nucleus which stores all of its DNA, and it has a cell membrane around the outside to control what goes in and out, and it's filled with cytoplasm, just like our cells, which is the jelly-like substance where all of the reactions happen. So you can see some similarities between amoeba and animal cells and plant cells, but there are differences as well, and that's due to their single-celled nature, because they can't have tissues and organs. So engulfing food made me think of the Absorbaloff monster from Doctor Who. So if you're a Doctor Who fan, that's a good way to remember what engulfing means. If you're not, I really apologise for this picture, because this monster is truly gruesome. Another important point about amoeba is how they reproduce. So in order to make more amoeba, what they do is they split into two. So you've got a parent cell here, it divides into two, and you've got one more amoeba. And that's how they reproduce. And here is that happening as seen down a light microscope. So you may also see these keywords used in relation to that. So this reproduction is asexual, because the amoeba aren't having sex like humans do. They're reproducing on their own. And it can also be called binary fission. Fission means splitting, and binary means two. So splitting into two, and mitosis, which is a type of cell division. So those are all alternative names for the reproduction of amoeba. All right, please can you pause the video now and draw this diagram of an amoeba and label it up to help you remember what an amoeba looks like. All right, here's our next type of unicellular organism, which is called euglena. So this is the same picture that I showed you at the very start. All right, here is the structure of a euglena. So we've got a nucleus, which we're familiar with. It houses the DNA. It's like the code book of the cell. We've got an extra detail of the nucleolus. We don't really need to know what that is. Euglena also has cytoplasm, which isn't labelled on this diagram. It's the jelly-like substance which fills the cell. It's where all the reactions happen. And they have mitochondria to provide energy. They have contractile vacuole like the amoeba does to get rid of waste. And euglena also actually has a cell wall all the way around it, which provides rigidity to the cell. So it doesn't move like the amoeba does with pseudopods, because the cell wall prevents the shape of the cell from changing. Instead, it's got one of these, which is called a flagellum. So one flagellum, two flagella, which is kind of like a tail, and it spins around or moves around, and it propels the euglena along so that it allows it to move. Another special thing that euglena have are chloroplasts, so that's why it looked green in the previous slide, because like animal cells, it also has chloroplasts. Can you please draw this picture of a euglena labelled up to show the contractile vacuole, the nucleus, the flagellum, which helps it move along, the eye spot, which I didn't mention. So the euglena is actually able to use the eye spot to detect light, and that's really important because euglena makes food using chloroplasts, so it has to be able to detect light using the eye spot and move towards the light using the flagellum, so that those chloroplasts have got the maximum possible light to do photosynthesis and make food for itself. So please, can you pause the video now and draw that cell? Okay, what do these subcellular structures do? So I think I've mentioned the function of all of these things. Please pause the video now and write down the functions or the jobs of all of these subcellular structures, and I'll show the answers in a moment. So here are the answers. The eye spot, also sometimes called the pigment spot, detects light. The pseudopods help the organism move, so that applies to the amoeba, where they change their shape and make a sort of foot to help them move. The contractile vacuole gets rid of excess water and also waste. The flagellum helps the organism to move, so it's a bit like a tail. The oral groove helps to gather food instead of a mouth. And the cilia also help the organism to move, and we'll come back to cilia in the body systems topic. Extension. Why do unicellular organisms need special subcellular structures? Do multicellular organisms have them? Why? Or if they don't, why not? So I have mentioned this. Pause the video now, write down your ideas, and then I'll show you the answers. Unicellular organisms need special subcellular structures because they don't have tissues or organs to carry out essential functions like digestion. On the other hand, multicellular organisms don't have special subcellular structures. Instead, they have tissues and organs made up of many cells which work together to carry out essential functions like digestion or circulation or movement. Okay? So multicellular organisms like us have tissues and organs, and unicellular organisms have special subcellular structures. Here's a little challenge for you to draw your own unicellular organism. So if you would like to do this, pause the video and read through those criteria, and feel free to send it to your science teacher for them to check it and see how you've done. Here's your summary. Unicellular organisms are living things made up of only one cell. Multicellular organisms, like plants and animals, are made up of lots of cells. Amoeba move using pseudopods. They eat by grabbing food with pseudopods and engulfing it, and they reproduce by dividing. Euglena produce food by photosynthesis using their chloroplast. They detect light using their eye spot, and they move towards the light using their flagellum. Thank you very much for listening. This is the end of the cells topic, and I will speak to you in the next topic. Goodbye.